So my topic for today is why you need to build a brand and why it's more important than ever for SEO. But it's also definitely important for your business as well, but specifically to support your SEO initiatives. And there's a lot of kind of elements to this. The first is just diversification. Let's face it, I mean, SEO is getting harder than ever. I mean, when we look across how SEO has been over the years, it just keeps getting more difficult. There's more moving parts. It's harder to diagnose algorithm updates. Like the waters have been muddied and it's very, very difficult. And just to put in perspective for people that are newer to SEO, let's say in the last 5 years or so, when I was starting in 2011, I'm telling you, when I say it was easy, it was stupidly easy. I mean, I could pick a keyword, I could slap up some silly little page with a title, one sentence, a video from YouTube, and an outbound link to Wikipedia, and I could rank that page just by slamming it with private blog network links. Now, and on top of it, they would rank within about 30 days. And this is for like relatively competitive keywords. These days, very, very different. If you try to play that game, the only people that could probably get away with that would be like Forbes or some massive authority. Maybe they could get away with something ridiculous. But for the average person, the rest of us, not a good strategy. So, and so the reason I'm saying that is just because I think some people are still kind of in the past as far as what it takes. I'm not sure I understand. There goes my watch. But I think some people are still in the past of their expectations of SEO and how much work goes into it. Because because it was so easy, I think some people have been anchored that, it's going to be, we're going to rank in 2 months or 3 months. And the way that I'm thinking about now is like, what's the SEO strategy for the rest of your life? Like, as long as your business wants to survive, like that's the way we should be thinking. We shouldn't be thinking in terms of, where are we going to be at in 3 months? So you should be like, no, like SEO is just a thing that we do permanently as long as we're in business or we get acquired, right? Like that's just the type of thing. So, but a part of that is that because it's so difficult and because there's things constantly changing and because we all know AI, there is a high probability that just overall organic CTR will decrease.
Sure.
I just think it's going to happen across the board.
Totally agree.
Yeah. And I think if you don't expect that, you're probably not really paying attention because Google absolutely wants to be able to just answer questions without going to our websites.
Yep.
And they're going to have to change their monetization model, whatever they're going to do. But I know they're thinking like, we're all playing checkers, they're playing chess. And they're thinking about how they can survive this, this new world. And I think that clicks are going to get eaten up. So you need to expect that. You need to prepare for it. And you need to prepare that you're going to get less traffic, even if you rank well. And that's kind of the situation. So don't be 100% reliant on SEO is my point. Like you need to start to build a brand. And
oh yeah, Nathan,
yeah,
I'll tell you this. I've been watching that forever, and I have an article and a deck that has an image where in one chart I show my rankings over time for the primary key phrase, which stays number 1 or number 2 for like 5 years. In the next chart down, it shows the click-through rate for that URL, which drops 75%. And on the third chart, literally I line them up so you can see the dates in line. On the third chart, you see total traffic, which crashes. You can rank number 1 for a phrase for years and watch just watch the traffic fall and fall and fall.
Right.
So it's click-through rates.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is too, even with like, back in the day, you used to be like, try to get on the first page of Google. The first page of Google is not the first, like it doesn't mean anything anymore. Being in the top 10 is basically like if you're number 9, you might as well be number 50 in a lot of SERPs. I mean, it's so different now. And basically, if you're going to do SEO, you basically have to aim for top 3. I mean, if you're not top 3, you're just the CTR is like you're fighting for scraps. So it's really, really tough. So that's why I'm just saying, like, as far as expectations with SEO, we need to kind of tone it down a little bit and realize this is going to take a lot of effort, and honestly, it's going to take a bigger investment. I know that's rich coming from a person who does SEO and sells SEO stuff and telling you to invest more in it, but it's just a
bigger
fact.
Effort.
It's more difficult. Yep. It's probably out of all the channels that you could do these days, it's probably the most difficult. I really do believe that. I mean, and I do all these channels. I do YouTube, I do email marketing, I do Twitter or X and LinkedIn. Like, they're way easier. like, like if I was starting today, maybe I'd tell people like, yeah, maybe just do like email newsletters or something. So the point is just much more difficult. So that's why it's more important than ever that we're building brand outside of just relying on organic search, because it should just be one among many things that you're doing. And the other part of it is kind of like a secondary effect of doing that, which I've witnessed in my own business. So when I'm looking at where conversions come from, it's really hard to get proper attribution. So what will happen is like, I will publish a video on YouTube, okay, and I'll get views there, but then I'll get leads that are attributed to Google. But I know that what happened actually is that I published a video on YouTube and someone, hey, that was pretty helpful. Who's this Nathan guy? And they search on Google, and then that gets attributed as a conversion from Google, even though I know that the original source was YouTube, right? So this is showing that like this is not, there's no longer like this kind of like singular type of effort going on. There's a lot of just the way people convert these days is erratic. It's very difficult to even track. I mean, someone could watch a YouTube video of mine, not convert for 6 months, see a tweet of mine, and then maybe like, oh yeah, I remember that, and then ignore me for another 6 months, and then see a LinkedIn post, and then go to Google, and then it gets attributed to Google.
Yep.
Right? Like, so it's just very, very difficult to track. And so the reason I'm saying that is because the beauty of building content on other platforms is we can drive branded searches. And branded searches, there's a lot of debate on whether they're ranking factors or not. I lean towards it not being a ranking factor just because it could be manipulated so easily. But I think it's more of the secondary effect, is which, like if someone watches a YouTube, let's say I watch a lot of YouTube content of mine and they consume a lot of my content in other platforms. When I create something on my blog, on the website, they're more likely to view that from a different lens, right? They already trust me, they know me, so they're going to view that through a different lens, and maybe that leads to them sharing that asset on my website, on the platforms. Maybe they have their own blog and they link to that asset. So now it's created all these kind of like secondary effects that were all caused from the original source of a different platform. So that's just kind of the way I think about it as far as diversification. And then do I still have enough time? I got one more point here. Am I still good? This is along the lines of just don't create content for SEO. And this is a little weird one because I think for many, many years, people have pushed this idea that like basically any website content you create should have an SEO objective. Like it needs to be keyword targeted. It needs to rank. And like, what if you like created a blog and SEO didn't exist? Right. Like what would you do? You'd say, well, I need to create content for my ideal customers. I need to create content that helps build my authority and my expertise. You'd be thinking about that. And you'd be thinking, like, I'm going to create something really cool. Like, I want to create something really cool that people want to share and people want to link to. You wouldn't be like, is this targeting a specific keyword? Like, it needs to target a keyword, otherwise I'm not going to publish it. Like, I have these conversations in the academy all the time, and someone's like, oh, I have this great idea for this like piece of link bait, but I can't find a keyword for it. And I'm like, why do you need to find a keyword for it? Like, if it's valuable, create it. Like, don't worry about SEO. So for me, what I've basically deployed, and I've actually talked about this for a few years, which is just a classic 80-20 rule on this. So if SEO is very important, 80% of your content should probably target some type of keyword phrase, some sort of topic, idea, whatever it is. The other 20% is where you have fun, like content marketing driven assets, assets that can actually attract links. Those could be tools, free software, whatever it is. Could be controversial type of things as well. So just anything that's really designed for content marketing is at like that 20%. And ironically, that 20% will probably drive most of your authority, which is where the fun happens. So that's just where I try to think about is like stop focusing so much on transactional driven type of assets. And like Seth Godin has proven this. If you go and look at Seth Godin's link profile, it's so insane. And he doesn't care about SEO.
That's right.
He doesn't care about SEO at all. And he's got like a DR81. So, And that's all because he is focusing on just content marketing. He's just doing his own thing in his own unique way, and people want to link to it. So, anyway, that's my rant for the day. So, yeah.
I like it. Well, I'll tell you a funny story about how I found you, Nathan, is that, so all three of us are contributors to SEMrush. And so I did an academy presentation and thought it went well. And then I asked to do another one and I presented it and I was like super excited. And then they're like, well, I can't have you do that. There's another guy who actually did the same exact presentation you did. And then I like looked it up. I was like, who is this guy? And then I started watching your stuff. I was like, he's pretty freaking smart.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So like at first I hated your guts. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, I get that. Yeah.
No, literally at first you got there first. And I just remember just being like, who is this guy? And then I started asking other SEOs that I know and they were like, hey, take his course too. And so we have a continuing education thing that we put our budget as an agency, we put a budget towards, and fortunately I got the last say. And so yours was one of the ones that I picked for this year. And so we've been going through it. It's really cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Let me talk to you a little bit about one of your comments about attribution. We had Rand Fishkin on, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, Andy? Was it?
Yep.
About a month ago, yeah. And he was talking about like the Wanamaker paradox of like, you're familiar with, like he says, like, I have 50% of my marketing and advertising works. I just don't know which 50%. And you know, but you're finding this in a lot of marketing now. Like what I mean by that is that a lot of social media, as soon as you put an outbound link, it's going to, your visibility is going to drop. SEO is getting harder to do. There's just a lot of things that are going to be related to, from a cookie standpoint, we're going to be in a cookieless future. There's just a lot of things where it's going to really make it harder for marketers. And Andy and I had this joke when this was, maybe about a year ago. And it's like, you're going to watch the real marketers are really going to shine. And the ones who have made so much of their money off of, hey, let's find keywords that have high visibility but low competition. Like that real estate is going to be gone. And there's going to be a lot of marketing companies that existed purely on that phenomenon. And I think in a world of a tsunami of synthetic content, there's going to be less and less and less of that real estate to be had. And I think SGE is going to take a big bite out of it too. So
yeah, I think that was your quote was, okay, we have to do thought leadership, but for real this time.
Right?
So is it, in a way though, what Rand was saying and what we can all sort of feel is that it's sort of like just going back to the basics prior to digital. Like it's, think about greats, like other people we've had on this show. I mean, Jay Baer wrote a book about word of mouth marketing. Talk triggers. Anybody working on that? Mark Schaefer just did a book about community, belonging to the brand. Anybody working on that? If you've built a community, algorithm changes are irrelevant to you because you go into Slack and there's like 600 people there who love you and your content. You post a link. There's no algorithm that's penalizing that. You've got a community. You're sort of safe. The word of mouth stuff, same thing. Like if you're top of mind, so who's trying to make something that's memorable? Like, I want to do something that attracts links or that ranks or that gets shared. Here's a metric. There's no metric for it. That's why it's called the availability heuristic. We overvalue things we can see. There is no metric for memorability. But when I write prompts in AI, I'm like, create a headline for this article or a profile for this LinkedIn page or an opening paragraph for this whatever and make it memorable. That's an awesome word to throw into a prompt. It's an awesome virtue to try to live by. Like, what is a brand? You got to stay in someone's mind, right? So I think that's it's super familiar. If you were asleep for 40 years and woke up, you'd be totally ready to do good marketing right now because you don't pay any attention to algorithms. I agree, Nathan. It drives me nuts. People are so obsessed with search. We do web development. Teach people search. Okay, working on a sitemap. And people start asking these weird questions like, what phrase should I target on my about page? What? Wait. You want to target a key phrase on your about page? What phrase do you think that might rank for? Like, it doesn't really make sense. It doesn't make sense. They're just obsessed with search. They forgot, they lost their minds. They forgot about every other channel. So yeah, Chris, your line about we got to do thought leadership. Post a strong opinion. ChatGPT can't do that. It has no opinions, right? We say ChatGPT can't throw a punch. Take a stand. Take a stand. You're automatically different, right? You're instantly differentiated. There's no keyword for it because it's strong opinion content, but not usually a keyword opportunity. But I think that's you're making an excellent point. Same thing Rand said and Jay said and Mark said and so many of the teachers I love. They're focused on things that go beyond the algorithm, and they're kind of immune to changes in Google and at LinkedIn and wherever.
Yeah, and I personally think it's easier than ever. That's kind of the crazy part, is that because everyone has, the pendulum has swung so far to people to what's easy, right? It's easy to, anyone can open up ChatGPT. Like, for example, my family last night, we were struggling with our Thanksgiving Eve menu, or sorry, Christmas Eve menu. And we were just struggling for an hour. What should we eat? We want to change it up. We eat the same stuff every year. And I was like, why don't we just go into ChatGPT and see what it gives us? And within seconds, we got a nice menu laid out for us. Like when I went through that experience, I even thought about like, wow, my job is in jeopardy. Because even just thinking about the fact that I did that, like I didn't go to Google. I went to ChatGPT and asked, like, give me some ideas here. And like, if you've had any experience on recipe websites or food blogs, it is like torture. I mean, it's literally torture. Like you're going in just to get a recipe for some chicken recipe. You got to scroll through like their life story. Then you got to get past 50,000 ads. Then eventually you'll maybe find the recipe. And it's just, the experience is awful. And that's all because of SEO.
Notifications, pop-up windows, accept cookies. Do you want to log in? The mobile experience especially is just horrible.
Yes, exactly. So
that's the joke that Andy used to be like, you have to get past grandma's 100-year-old recipe. And you're like, dude, I just want the ingredients.
Right. And this all stems back from people wanting to do pure SEO strategies. Like, I'm only going to do it if it's going to help my SEO. I'm only going to do it if it's got a keyword. Like, it's just, that worked for a long time, but I think those days have finally gone away. And I think these days, especially Google, like they just introduced that new schema for profile pages and forum discussions. This is Google trying to swing back to like human-driven content, in my opinion, right? I think, the experience, the first E in Google's EAT guidelines, I think is just becoming more important. And I even think that even for keywords that's you would believe to be more of like an objective type of keyword that would need like objective type of content, I think even then Google's probably going to start to look like, okay, there's some like opinions in here, some subjective elements in here that signify that this person actually knows what they're talking about. And I don't know how Google can really do that at this point. I don't know if it's that advanced where it can, I know with NLP technology, it can kind of decipher what's going on to a certain extent, but that's up for debate as far as how far it can go. But I definitely think that when you look at a lot of content that does perform well, and I did a very deep study on the experience side of Google EAT, and I looked at a bunch of assets, and the ones that had a lot of like first person in it did really well. So I don't know if Google has that, kind of built in there for some queries. Like if you look up like the best pizza, a lot of the ones that are ranking are like, I tried 75 different pizzas, or, and that's also what works on YouTube. Like if you look on YouTube, a lot of the stuff where it's review-based content is like, I bought 100 laptops. Here's the best one. Like it's always that type of like experimental type of content that does really well. And of course, Google's using what's happening on YouTube to inform search. There's no way that they're not blending those things together. So, and plus the last thing is with Reddit and Quora getting such a huge boost after the last updates. I mean, they're literally telling us, they're telling us what they're looking for by doing that. So, I think making some adjustments there would probably be wise.
Yeah. It's almost like just focusing specifically on the first two E's of the EEAT. You know what I mean? Like if Google can basically pick that out. And I didn't think about like even changing the tone of voice to first person for certain paragraphs might be just enough of a language signal that, I mean, that's really smart. I didn't think about it like that.
Well, it might also be attributable to the user interaction signals. If a visitor lands on a page and that page is talking to them first person, about themselves, their personal experience, that visitor may be more likely to engage, scroll down, dig deeper, click on a link, stay in higher dwell time. Maybe it's just that content is instantly differentiated because it's more personal, and that difference makes people more engaged, sending that dwell time and user interaction signals into Google. But either way, I love what you said, Nathan, about like, what if there was no Google? That's also what works in social. That's what works in analytics, just on engagement metrics. That's what works in like word of mouth and thought leadership and like having a point of view, being a person with a perspective. set Google aside completely and ask what you would do, you'd do that. You'd tell a story. You'd connect with a visitor on a human level. Like you'd be kind of like P2P type dialogue and tone. It's just, and that's also going to help you differentiate in the future from AI-driven content, because that's not really what people are generating from AI. Although you would know better than me. You've got some great background in AI-driven generated content. I can let you take that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been having a lot of fun with AI content for a while now. And before the call, we were talking about the different methods we can use. And I have stuff that's still ranking prior to ChatGPT coming out when I was using Jasper. And just so you guys know, like the difference is like with Jasper, at least when I was using it, and honestly, I feel really bad for Jasper, by the way. I mean, they were really killing it there right before ChatGPT. They were at the top of the world. And then ChatGPT launched, and I just know for a fact that they felt the pain of that. I know people went right into Jasper, canceled their membership. Like, it just was probably a devastating experience. So I feel bad in that regard. But prior to that, it was the thing you would use. Really, there were a lot of other ones, but that was the one. So it was actually using GPT-3 at that time. And like I said, I still have content written by GPT-3 that's still ranking. So people might think that Google can like understand AI content, or they're going to penalize AI content. Hard to say. I think one thing that you mentioned, Andy, that I think is really important is, I mentioned that like, okay, maybe they're able to kind of measure the experience based on kind of the words that are on on the actual page. But I would actually argue what you're saying is more correct, which is it's really a secondary type of thing. That's the leading signal is the user signals that are the product of the first person type of content. And so I absolutely agree, because one thing I've been talking a lot about recently and just thinking about in general is like, I feel like for a long time, the last couple of years, people have been creating SEO driven content algorithm first. So they think about the algorithm first. They think about, okay, I'm going to go into Surfer and I'm going to extract the titles and the headlines and the NLP keywords, and I'm going to build it like that. There's nothing wrong with that, right? You're modeling what works. Nothing inherently wrong with that. But the problem is you're leading with the algorithm first instead of leading with, is someone going to like this? Is someone going to engage with this? Yeah. Is someone going to link to this? And thinking about, because like what I've realized is, and I should have realized this earlier, but now it's kind of all coming together now, which is like Google's just a lagging type of algorithm, right? Like if Google doesn't have any inputs, it doesn't do anything. It needs input. So like it begins with the content, but then once that content gets indexed, Google's looking at a lot of other things to determine if that page should rank, right? And it doesn't have the ability to look at the content and say, this is great content. Andy produced it, must be good. It's not the way it works, right? And in fact, even now with their, that antitrust case that they're currently going through, they literally said that they pretend to know the content. Like they don't even actually know the quality of it at all. And so what they're doing is they're obviously looking at user signals. Where they grab those user signals, obviously that's up for debate. Like, are they using Google Chrome? Are they using obviously CTR data in the search? I think everyone's just kind of hypothesizing about what they actually use. But that's one element. And then also the more lagging metric is going to be on the link side. And so if that, which continues to be one of the biggest ranking factors. So for me, I've just been so focused on user experience because I just think it matters so much. And that's why I've been trying to like advise everyone, because we can't really like see what Google's going to give us. You can go into GA4 and they add that metric, the engagement rate metric.
Sure, yeah.
I think it's awesome.
Me too.
Because
I love that
because you can integrate it within Screaming Frog, and when you do your crawl, you can look at the engagement rate on every single page. And if you go and like I've done this correlation many times, you see like, okay, has no links, it has bad engagement, it has low word count, and it's deep in the site architecture. Like it's got a lot of issues you can typically see. And I've actually looked at some pages and it will have low engagement rate, and we go and actually improve that engagement. First, you need to make sure you have a tool like Hotjar or Mouseflow or some sort of UX tracking. And then you can really just see the data, like how are people engaging with these? And I'm telling you, every time I look at the low engagement rate and I cross-check with one of those UX tracking, it makes sense. I'm like, oh, that page does suck. So we need to do something about that. So it's just, that's kind of where my mind's been recently, just really focused on like, how do we make the page better? And sometimes it's not huge monumental changes. Sometimes it's just like, let's rework the intro a little bit. Let's make it more, let's get some hooks in here that can get people to want to actually consume this content, as opposed to just like, here's the keyword that we want to rank for. And, here's the H2 that has the keyword in it. Just that kind of like robotic way of creating content needs to just hopefully die off. So
for users and listeners who aren't familiar with engagement, an engaged session is a session that is more than 10 seconds, more than 2 pages, or had a conversion event. So it's similar to bounce rate. It's kind of the inverse of bounce rate. And what I tell people, if you want to improve engagement on a page, focus on short paragraphs, lots of bullet lists, an image at every scroll depth, maybe a video high on the page, and then make those H2s, forget about keywords for a minute and throw some punches. Don't soften all your language. Like, be more direct, like be a bit provocative and write in a bold way, Anne would say, right? Another former guest.
Yeah. Yep.
Chris, you were saying?
I think, yeah, well, I mean, I think one of the things that I think is kind of killing two birds with one stone that sort of marries what you both said was, what I always notice is that you could always remember after COVID, like literally half the blogs you would read would start out in these unprecedented times. And like, I'm just like, dude, will you get to it? You know what I mean? It's like, kill me now, right? Right. But like, one of the things that you can do is you can literally start out your paragraphs with case study based information. That's like, I looked at 300 websites, and it doesn't even have to be a case study you made. Like, I do this all the time. And I mean, this is right out of your 1% content strategy, is like, you want to know how to do this? This is real quick Cliff Notes. Get a VA or get yourself, take the top 20 manufacturers. Say you study manufacturers. Find the top 20 manufacturers. How many of them have a drop-down menu? How many of them have a hero bar? How many have a video above the fold? Like, find 8 different factors and just say, I studied the top 20 and this is what I got. And it's all first person point of view. It's all case study, and it all starts out with value right at the top of the page, right? As opposed to like just dripping it in. You're like, dude, people are going to leave right out of the gate. Like, you personally don't have to have like done all this research yourself. I mean, like, literally it's so easy. It's like a layup and it's right there, but we just drag our feet to get to it. Hey, I'm just sorry to end my own thought here with another thought. I'm just looking at the time here.